Ryland stepped off his small craft onto the vibrant, lush planet of Varaxia. His mission was clear: serve as an ambassador for Earth and establish peaceful trade relations with the Varaxians, a reclusive alien species with mysterious customs. The planet had been discovered only a few decades ago, but the Varaxians had shown little interest in communication until now. Breathing deeply, Ryland took in his surroundings. The thick, tropical air was sweet with a floral scent, and a dim glow emanated from the plant life around him, illuminating the darkening sky. Towering trees with silvery bark stretched toward the horizon, their tops disappearing into swirling clouds. The ground underfoot was soft and springy, giving every step an almost buoyant sensation. It was as though the planet itself was alive, welcoming and strange all at once. A delegation from the village awaited him at the edge of the forest. He'd been told that the Varaxians were humanoid in appearance, but nothing had prepared him for how striking they were. Their skin shimmered like polished stone, with hues ranging from pale blue to deep silver, while their eyes gleamed like polished gems. Long, flowing hair cascaded down their backs, interwoven with strands of metallic fibers that caught the faint light, making it seem as if their very beings glowed in the dimming twilight. The leader of the group, a tall woman with a crown of woven crystal, stepped forward. She regarded Ryland with a gaze that felt both curious and appraising, as though she were studying him, measuring his worth. Behind her, the rest of the tribe, primarily women, watched in silence. Their presence was imposing, yet not unfriendly. There was something in their stance, a sense of expectation that made Ryland's pulse quicken. "Welcome to Varaxia, guest of Earth," the leader said in a voice that seemed to resonate with the planet itself. Her name, he remembered from the briefing, was Eliana, the high priestess of her tribe. "You have been invited to join us as part of a sacred custom. Are you prepared to honor our traditions?" Ryland nodded, though a sense of unease crept up his spine. The customs of Varaxia were largely unknown to outsiders, and the briefing he'd received before landing had been vague at best. Something about delighting the tribe, but he hadn't pressed for details. After all, diplomacy often meant navigating unfamiliar waters. "I'm honored to be here," Ryland said, bowing slightly out of respect. "I hope I can fulfill your expectations." Eliana smiled, though there was a hint of mischief in her eyes. "You will soon understand, guest. Our customs are unique, but once embraced, they lead to great harmony between our people and yours." She gestured for him to follow, and Ryland was led deeper into the village. The architecture of the buildings was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Houses were built into the living trees themselves, with winding staircases of woven branches leading to homes that seemed to float above the ground. The air was filled with a soft hum, almost like the planet's natural rhythm, resonating with every step he took. As they entered the village's heart, Ryland could feel the gazes of the villagers on him. Most were women, tall, elegant, and striking in their beauty. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their every motion fluid and purposeful. He couldn't help but feel the weight of their attention on him, though it wasn't hostile. If anything, it felt like anticipation, as though they were waiting for something. Eliana stopped in front of a grand structure at the center of the village. It was larger than the others, with intricate carvings and crystals embedded into its surface, glowing faintly in the twilight. The structure seemed to pulse with energy, and Ryland couldn't shake the feeling that it was alive in some way. "This is the Hall of Accord," Eliana explained. "It is here that we celebrate the arrival of honored guests. You will be the first human to ever partake in our most sacred tradition." Ryland's curiosity piqued, though his unease deepened. "And what exactly is this tradition?" he asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. Eliana's smile widened, but her expression remained enigmatic. "You will be required to delight the women of the tribe," she said, her voice carrying a note of finality. "It is a custom as old as our people, one that strengthens bonds and ensures the success of all future relations." Ryland blinked, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "Delight?" he echoed, unsure if he understood correctly. "Yes," Eliana confirmed, stepping closer. "Each woman of the tribe must be pleased, entertained, and made to feel valued. It is a rite of passage for any outsider seeking to establish trust with us." The implications of her words began to sink in, and Ryland felt a flush rise to his cheeks. This was unlike any diplomatic mission he had ever been on. His mind raced as he tried to think of how he could possibly meet such an expectation. Was this some sort of elaborate test, or was it truly part of their culture? Before he could ask more questions, a low hum resonated through the village, and the women began to gather. One by one they approached, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of curiosity and interest. Ryland felt his heart pound in his chest. This was not the standard negotiation or treaty he had anticipated. No, this was something far more personal and far more challenging. Eliana gestured toward the gathering crowd. Tonight the tradition begins. You will entertain each of the women, offering them joy, laughter, and satisfaction. Only then will the bond between our worlds be sealed. Ryland swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. He had signed up for diplomacy, but he had never expected this. He stood at the threshold of a challenge unlike any he had ever faced, with the eyes of an entire tribe upon him. As the night began to fall and the glow of the plants around him intensified, Ryland knew there was no turning back. The only way forward was through the strange sacred tradition of the Varaxians, a test that would either cement a new alliance or leave him utterly overwhelmed. Chapter 2. The performance of a lifetime. Ryland stood at the center of the gathering, his mind racing as the Varaxian women surrounded him. Their eyes glimmered in the soft light of the crystals embedded in the village's structures. There was no escape, no chance to back out. The tension hung heavy in the air, thick with expectation, and the curious gaze of the women only heightened his anxiety. He had always been quick on his feet, able to navigate complex negotiations with ease, but this was different. He wasn't here to haggle over trade deals or mediate disputes. He was here to delight, whatever that meant. Breathe, Ryland reminded himself, inhaling deeply to steady his nerves. Eliana stepped forward, her silvery gaze locking onto his. There is no need for worry, Ryland. You are among friends, and the women of the tribe are eager to welcome you. That did little to ease his tension, but he managed a nod. The hum of the village seemed to synchronize with the beating of his heart, pulsing steadily in his ears. The women waited, their expressions expectant but not unkind. They stood in a semicircle around him, each one uniquely stunning, yet with a shared elegance that made them seem like facets of the same crystal. Their postures were relaxed, yet there was a clear sense that they were evaluating him, measuring him in ways that went beyond physical appearance. So, Ryland began, his voice betraying his uncertainty. What exactly should I be doing to delight the women of the tribe? Eliana smiled knowingly. That is for you to discover. Each woman seeks something different. Some wish for conversation, some for laughter, others for music, or even stories from distant worlds. You must sense their needs and meet them. It is the essence of our custom, the ability to connect, to understand, and to provide joy in a way that goes beyond the surface. Ryland frowned. That didn't sound too bad, though the weight of the task still pressed heavily on him. Diplomacy often involved subtlety, and in many ways this felt similar. But there was something more intimate about this particular challenge. It wasn't enough to be polite or formal. He needed to make a genuine connection with each of them. One of the women stepped forward. She had deep violet hair woven with silver beads, and her skin shimmered with a faint lavender hue. Her eyes gleamed with curiosity, and she offered a small, shy smile. I am Vala, she said softly, her voice lilting and melodic. I have heard many things about your people, but I want to know what brings joy to you. Ryland blinked, caught off guard. Joy to me, Vala nodded. Yes. How can you offer delight to another if you don't know what brings delight to yourself? Ryland had never considered that question. His life had been dedicated to duty and diplomacy, rarely leaving room for personal joys. He thought for a moment, unsure how to answer. I suppose I enjoy learning new things, meeting new people, seeing new worlds. And music, I've always had a love for music. Vala's smile widened, and she motioned for him to sit on a nearby woven mat. She followed suit, her movements graceful and fluid. Then perhaps you can share your music with me. We Varaxians have our own melodies, but I have never heard the songs of Earth. Ryland hesitated. He hadn't expected to perform music in front of an audience, but he wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. He reached the small personal device he carried, a multifunctional tool that included a digital archive of Earth's cultural artifacts. With a few taps, he pulled up a selection of songs. The soft hum of a guitar began to play, and a classic Earth ballad filled the air. The gentle strumming, accompanied by the distant vocals, seemed to resonate with the natural sounds of the Varaxian village. The alien woman closed her eyes, her body swaying slightly to the rhythm. "This is beautiful," Vala whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. "It's so peaceful." Rylan felt a small sense of relief wash over him. Perhaps this task wasn't as impossible as he had feared. He could do this, share experiences, make connections. He spent the next few minutes explaining the song's meaning, the emotions tied to it, and the significance of music in Earth's history. Vala listened intently, her curiosity only growing. As the song faded, Vala stood and bowed her head. "You have brought me joy, Rylan." "Thank you," he smiled, feeling the first flicker of confidence since stepping foot on Varaxia. One down, several more to go. The next woman, taller with deep, forest-green eyes and sleek, black hair, approached him with a look of determination. She carried herself with an air of authority, but there was a playfulness in her gaze. "I am Mira," she introduced herself. "I've heard that humans enjoy games of wit and strategy. I challenge you to one of ours." She gestured toward a large, circular stone table, where a game board had been etched into the surface. Pieces made of crystal and wood lay scattered across the board, their arrangement unfamiliar to Rylan. Mira sat down opposite him and motioned for him to join. Rylan took his seat, eyeing the game board cautiously. "How do we play?" Mira smirked. "The rules are simple. You must move your pieces in a way that mirrors the flow of nature. Balance is key. Every action must be met with an equal reaction. If you misstep, you lose your connection to the flow, and I will win." Rylan nodded, though the explanation only raised more questions. "And how do I know if I'm following the flow?" Mira leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "You'll feel it." The game began, and Rylan quickly realized that this was no ordinary test of strategy. Every move he made required careful thought, not only in terms of the pieces on the board, but in how they resonated with the rhythm of the planet itself. The hum that had filled the air earlier seemed to sync with the game, and as he played, Rylan began to sense the pulse of Varaxia, the ebb and flow of its energy. It was subtle, but he found himself adjusting his movements, not by logic but by instinct. Mira's smile grew wider as the game progressed. "You are doing well, human. Better than I expected." Rylan couldn't help but grin. The challenge was exhilarating, and with each turn he grew more attuned to the game's rhythm. Eventually he made a final move that caused Mira to sit back in surprise. "You've done it," she said with genuine admiration. "You've mastered the flow." Rylan exhaled in relief, feeling a surge of accomplishment. 2 women had been pleased, and he was beginning to understand the depth of this custom. It wasn't about physical prowess or even material offerings. It was about connection, about understanding the desires and emotions of each person he encountered. But as the night wore on, more women approached, each with her own request, her own desire for delight, and Rylan realized that this was only the beginning. He still had much to learn and many more women to delight. Chapter 3. The Unveiling of Secrets. As the night deepened, Rylan felt a growing sense of accomplishment, yet also exhaustion. He had engaged with several women of the tribe, each one presenting a different challenge. Some asked for stories of Earth, while others sought to know his thoughts on life, philosophy, or the stars. Yet through it all, he began to realize that the Varaxian custom was not simply about delighting them. It was about vulnerability, about opening himself up in a way he had never done before. Eliana, the high priestess, approached him once again, her steps soft as she moved through the flickering light of the village. "You have done well, Rylan. You have pleased many women tonight, but the most important part of our custom still remains." Rylan, though exhausted, straightened. "What do you mean?" Eliana gazed at him with her shimmering eyes, her expression more serious now. "You have connected with the women, yes, but there is one last step before the bond between our people can truly be forged. You must now give yourself over to our way, fully and without hesitation." The cryptic nature of her words unnerved him, And what does that involve? He asked cautiously. Eliana smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. It is not a physical task, but a spiritual one. The custom you've partaken in is about more than joy. It's about understanding the collective soul of the tribe. You must allow yourself to be vulnerable in a way that is difficult for many outsiders. Only by showing your truest self, your innermost fears and desires, can the bond be completed. Ryland stared at her, his mind racing. This was far more than what he had anticipated. He had come here expecting trade negotiations, not to bare his soul to an alien tribe. But how? Eliana reached out and touched his chest, her fingers warm against his skin. It is simple. Speak your truth, Ryland of Earth. Share what burdens your heart, what brings you fear, what gives you hope. The village around him seemed to fall silent, the ever-present hum fading into the background as Ryland stood there, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He hesitated, unsure of what to say, but as he looked into her eyes, so full of understanding, so full of expectation, he realized that this moment was what the entire evening had been building toward. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself, to show that I'm strong, capable, worthy of respect. But the truth is, I've always felt like an outsider. No matter where I go, I never feel like I truly belong. The words spilled out before he could stop them, raw and unfiltered. Eliana nodded, her expression softening as if she had expected this. And now you do, Ryland, now you belong. With those words, the hum of the village returned, stronger than ever. It wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, a connection. Ryland felt it deep within him, a warmth spreading through his chest as if the planet itself was embracing him. You've completed the custom, Eliana said, her voice barely above a whisper. The bond is sealed. Chapter 4, The Return Home. The morning light on Varaxia was unlike anything Ryland had ever seen. The glowing flora bathed the village in a soft, otherworldly light, and the air felt lighter, almost as if the entire planet was welcoming a new day. The events of the previous night still weighed on his mind, but in a way that brought him peace rather than burden. He had faced the challenge, embraced the custom, and emerged changed. As he prepared to leave the village, Eliana and the other women gathered to see him off. Their expressions were warm, almost familial, as if he had become one of their own. The connection he had made with them went beyond the simple tasks of delighting and entertaining. It was deeper, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Thank you, Ryland said, bowing his head to Eliana. I didn't know what to expect when I came here, but I leave with more than I ever could have imagined. Eliana placed a hand on his shoulder. And we thank you, Ryland. You have honored our traditions and brought great joy to our tribe. The bond between our people and yours is now strong, and we will always welcome you here. The ship's engines hummed in the distance, signaling it was time for him to depart. As he walked toward his craft, Ryland felt a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and something else, something he couldn't quite place, but that resonated with the connection he had made on this strange, beautiful planet. He paused just before entering the ship, turning back to look at the village one last time. The women stood in the clearing, their shimmering forms glowing softly in the morning light. He raised a hand in farewell, and they responded in kind, their eyes watching him with warmth and fondness. As the ship lifted off, Ryland stared out the window, watching the planet slowly recede into the vastness of space. Varaxia had been an unexpected adventure, one that had tested him in ways no diplomatic mission ever had before, and yet, despite the challenges, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The stars stretched out before him, and as he set a course for Earth, Ryland couldn't help but smile. He had come to Varaxia as an outsider, but he left with a newfound understanding of connection, not just between worlds, but between souls. The stars, once cold and distant, now seemed a little warmer,